In this video, I'm going to show you one simple way to reduce pain and numbness and tingling of the hand associated with carpal tunnel syndrome. Hey everyone, I'm Sebastian at Performance Place Sports Care, part of locally world famous chiropractors in Costa Mesa, California. Now before we actually get into the exercise or stretch that actually makes people feel typically pretty good if they really do have carpal tunnel syndrome, we should first explain a little bit about what carpal tunnel is and some tests that are performed typically when you are evaluated for it. Now a lot of people that I've met, they said, well, I went in to see somebody and I said I had numbness or tingling of the hand, and so they said I had carpal tunnel syndrome. That's not 100% the best way to go about it. History is important. How you feel is important. A lot of times people will feel an increase as they're using their hands. Desk work, repeated use of the fingers, short movements are really common in the history of people with carpal tunnel syndrome, but it's not the only thing that needs that means that you have carpal tunnel syndrome. Now, the fingers in the distribution of where your sensation changes are or where the numbness is really important. If you have numbness of the thumb, you may have carpal tunnel syndrome. If you have numbness of the index finger and middle finger, you may have carpal tunnel syndrome, especially if it's on the front side of the hand here, or the palmar aspect we say. Now, if you have symptoms on the back of the hand, or that involve these fingers, especially the pinky finger, then you probably don't have carpal tunnel syndrome. In that case, going through this video further, we're going to end up showing a stretch that is probably not going to help you because it's not specific to what you have. Now, people that have numbness into the pinky finger oftentimes will have something that is related to different levels of the spinal cord that do not include the nerve roots that create the median nerve. So, if you have numbness of this finger, then you have to realize that it's possibly the problem's a little bit higher, okay? Now, a few of the tests, the orthopedic tests that you can do to identify if you have carpal tunnel syndrome or not are Phalen's and reverse Phalen's and Tinel's. Okay, I'll show each of those in turn here. You can try them on if you're on your own if you want, but these are the orthopedic tests that typically people will do if they examine you really thoroughly inside their office. Now, before we go on to the actual test, we have a book on numbness of the hand, which is really helpful. A link will be in the description below, or it'll pop up inside the screen. Phalen's is pretty simple. You're going to take the fingers, interlock them all together just like so, and then you're going to slide this down into a prayer position. Hold it for about 10 seconds or so. Some of you will have some symptoms that come about into the fingers by holding this position for about 10 seconds. Other people might take a little bit longer, 30 seconds or so. Generally, if this increases the symptoms, what we're looking at is that a stretch mechanism of the median nerve as it goes through the carpal tunnel is what's provoking. In that case, it's a little bit more confirming that you have the actual condition. The other one's called reverse Phalen's, where you're going to do the exact opposite of what you just did and hold the fingers just like so, or the wrist just like so. Hold it for about 10 to 30 seconds roughly again. Some of you may have symptoms, some of you won't. Now, again, the distribution is important. So if it's within these fingers here, with this test, what you're seeing is if compression of the median nerve that goes through the tunnel is what is creating the condition. Now, the third thing you can do is called Tinel's test. Tinel's test is a simple tapping test on the median nerve to see if it duplicates the symptoms. We believe that Tinel's is, when it's positive into a region, it's related to the location of the compression. Now, to be fair, you can have compression of the median nerve at different locations, such as the pronator up into the forearm. You can have it up into the shoulder and even into the neck, as the nerve roots that create the median nerve can be compressed too as they're exiting the neck. The Tinel's test is pretty simple. You would just tap right around here. If you're not sure where, you just tap a bunch of spots. Tap firmly, and you'll start to notice at some point you may find some tenderness, but a positive test is going to be that it duplicates the symptoms into these fingers. Remember, if it goes into this finger, it's not carpal tunnel syndrome, it's something else, which is very treatable, but it's not this. Okay? So these are the basic 3 tests you can do. Now here's the thing with the carpal tunnel, is that it's a tunnel. Okay? Essentially what's happening if you have carpal tunnel syndrome is you have compression of the contents of the tunnel, including the nerve. Other things that go through the tunnel are the tendons to the fingers. And so sometimes swelling within a tunnel that is a finite size will create compression on the contents if some things are getting larger. That it can include the nerve, or say you have something like tendonitis of the tendons that go through. The thing what we like to do is we like to have people just open the tunnel and just sit. Here's what it looks like, is you essentially form a bracelet here, and then you would just squeeze your fingers together like so, and just hold it. The rest of the fingers are just relaxed and you just hang in this position. Most of the time when people have true carpal tunnel syndrome, doing a light bracelet stretch is very helpful for decompressing the median nerve at the carpal tunnel. This would only last for about 30 seconds. You take a break, and then you go again. Typically, we have people do it about 3 times. And if it is helpful, most of the time we'll have them check what we call something called an audit process. If Phelan's was positive, and they did this 3 times, and now it's negative, that would be a really good intervention to start with. Now, if you really do have carpal tunnel syndrome, just know that reducing the swelling at the location is just step 1. That can be done surgically or with something like a bracelet maneuver. It does not fully explain the reason why you have it in the first place. So typically what we need to do is figure out what's going on with the rest of your life, with your habits, what's creating this in the first place, and reverse engineer that process. Typically it requires a handful of stretches, a handful of exercises that are customized to what your lifestyle is and what your history is and where the locations of compression are. So we can supply that for you. We have virtual or in-person services for that. You can find us in the link description below. The last thing I want to note too before you do go is that carpal tunnel syndrome is typically not bilateral, both sides. Okay? Anytime you hear bilateral carpal tunnel syndrome, you should be thinking this is probably a neck complaint, even if you don't have neck pain. We've seen a lot of times at Performance Place when people have numbness or tingling in the fingers bilaterally, there's a higher probability they have something going on with their neck, such as a disc herniation or some type of stenosis or arthritic change, which is creating pressure on a nerve root, which is creating symptoms down into the fingers. Typically, it's going to be C6 nerve root most of the time. If you have a single-side carpal tunnel syndrome, it makes more sense. If you guys are looking for help, reach out in the description below. We'd love to help you out. Give a thumbs up to the channel and the video. Subscribe. We'll see you next time.